अब इसमें गोइंग लाइव दिखा रहा है। ओके, अब मैं स्टार्ट करूं क्या? यू आर लाइव है।
हाँ बोले।
ओके, गुड आफ्टरनून, आई एम एकता हियर।
आपका नेट कनेक्शन है ना?
हाँ हाँ, नेट कनेक्शन है और मैं वाईफाई पे हूँ।
ओके,
मैं स्टार्ट करूं सेशन?
मैम वी आर जस्ट टेस्टिंग।
हाँ,
जो हम बोले ना यू कैन स्टार्ट, तभी आप स्टार्ट करना। तो टेस्टिंग के लिए अभी आप बोलिए।
ओके,
हमें अभी तक आपकी स्क्रीन नहीं मिली है।
अच्छा ठीक है चलेगा। गुड हाँ बताइए। हाँ, मेरी आवाज क्लियर आ रही है क्या आपको?
शायद कुछ ऑफर रहता है ना अपने सारी काउंसलर के साथ कॉल करते वाले। शायद सविता मैम स्टेटस शायद। ओके ओके ओके, ठीक है।
Hello friends, in today's session we are going to talk about the first paper of the course of post graduation diploma in guidance and counseling. This paper is called Principles and Procedures of Guidance. There's one thing that I would want to, however, make clear is that even if you use the term guidance throughout the paper, you need to understand that what we are going to talk is mainly related to counseling and not guidance. हेलो मैम, हेलो। हाँ हाँ, लाइट सारे ऑन है। एक्चुअली फोन पे और इस पे ना, हाँ इस फोन पे और इस पे ना डिफरेंस आ रहा है। फोन पे काफी क्लियर आ रहा था, इस पे डार्क हो गया है समहाउ। ठीक है, हाँ ठीक है, ओके। हाँ हाँ, एक सेकेंड। गुड आफ्टरनून। हाँ हाँ, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, मुझे बस सिलेबस चाहिए। तो अगर मैं सिलेबस पे जाऊंगी तो मुझे नहीं देख पाएंगे क्या? ऐसा होगा? हाँ हाँ, मैं फोन में खोल सकती हूँ। हाँ, मैंने सिलेबस खोला हुआ है, मैंने सिलेबस ही खोला हुआ है अभी। नहीं नहीं, मैंने मिनिमाइज नहीं किया था। हाँ हाँ हाँ, ओके ओके, हाँ हाँ चलेगा, ओके, थैंक यू, बाय। Good afternoon, everybody. This is Ekta here, and as you can see, today we are starting with an introductory session or an introductory series of sessions that will help you uh, move or navigate through the syllabus of your course. As you all are participating in this course, which is post graduation diploma in guidance and counseling, and this course is divided into 4 papers. So this series of sessions will actually be 4 separate sessions, and in each of these sessions we are going to talk about single one paper at a time, and I will kind of run you through this the syllabus or the content of each of these papers. The paper that we are going to see today is the first paper, and is actually was one of the most interesting papers of this entire course. It is called Principles and Procedures of Guidance and Counseling. Now, your course, the course that you're studying is called Guidance and Counseling. And you must be wondering as to why the term guidance and counseling is mentioned separately. For this, you need to understand some basic concepts. So, before we run through the syllabus, let us clarify some things that you will encounter throughout in this course. The three basic terms that you will encounter throughout your course are guidance, then the second one is counseling, and the third one is psychotherapy. These terms may sound similar or may sound kind of synonymous or replaceable, but there is starking difference between these terms. The first term, that is guidance, or that is which is a theme of this particular paper. So when we talk about guidance, we talk about something that is happening at a very preliminary level. Now some of you would already be working in various organizations that deal with community, that deal with clients who come to you with issues and concerns. Some of you would not have started working or would not have started interacting with clients at separate levels. So for both of these groups, so there are different kind of clients that will come to you or that would have come to you in your organization, and these clients will have varying levels of concerns. So, what you do at a preliminary level or with clients who have interpersonal issues, with clients who have adjustment issues, with clients who have problems in their day to day life and day to day environment, is guidance. So, when we talk about guidance, in simplistic terms, we talk about how you can guide a particular person through this path of finding solutions to his or her daily problems. Now you would say that we do the same thing in counseling. So what is the difference between guidance and counseling? So what happens is, counseling is a little bit more elaborate, a little bit more time taking process than guidance. uh, Now you will see different kinds of clients with you. You will see some clients with whom you would be meeting only once. So let's say you are working uh, in a school as a school counselor, and you know that this during the period of enrollment, you see a lot of children, a lot of parents coming to you seeking admissions in your respective school or college. uh, Most of these people, you would be meeting them only once or maximum two times. In this duration or in this limited interaction period, uh, it is the interactions or the process that you involved with your client, you cannot term them as counseling, since it is brief, since it is to the point, and since it is solution oriented. The term guidance would be more appropriate to describe this process. So now again, as a school counselor, you would be seeing certain students or certain parents over a period of time. So let's say over a period of 6 sessions, over a period of 8 sessions, and they would be coming to you with a specific problem which you would be addressing over a period of time. So here, the interaction with your clients is long term, is more systematic, and it is more towards just not finding the solution, but also making your clients independent in their process. Now this is called counseling, because here you will be following certain steps, certain guidelines and taking the client through this process and making him or her independent, as well as more accomplished, or increasing capabilities of the client in the process. So this is counseling. Now let's come to something that is more complicated, which is psychotherapy. So the difference between counseling and psychotherapy is comes from the nature of the clients. The concerns of the clients who come for counseling are basic, are more to do with their social environment, to with their interpersonal environment, occupational environment, and they are the problems are not as complicated or as complex when as compared to the clients who require psychotherapy. When we talk about psychotherapy, we also must know that these clients have something that is called a psychiatric illness or a psychological illness accompanied with their other issues. So the concerns or the social interpersonal occupational problems of the client are resulting from an underlying psychiatric condition, and hence along with the counseling you also need to focus on providing them with the medication. So you will have to work along with the uh, the psychiatrists who are kind of giving them the medical treatment, and you are giving them uh, the counseling or the non-medical treatment in this procedure. So we'll not talk a lot about psychotherapy in this paper, because we have another paper which talks about psychotherapy in detail. uh, okay, so now let's come back to this paper. This paper, as we say, is called Principles and Procedures in Guidance and Counseling. This paper is basically divided into 5 units. The first 2 units are focusing on the theoretical aspect of the syllabus, and the next 3 units are focusing on the practical aspects of guidance and counseling. Uh, in your graduation, in your bachelor's in psychology, for those who have had 6 papers, there is a paper specially dedicated to counseling. So, if you recall the things that you have learned in this paper, you must have covered what is counseling. So, you must have covered the definition, you must have covered the principles of counseling, you must have covered the various skills or the various attributes of of a counselor, which include empathetic listening, genuineness, confidentiality. So those things you must have covered in brief when you were talking or when you were studying in your bachelor's. However, when we are now coming to a kind of a master's or a postgraduate level, we'll talk a lot about how these things will be implied or will be applied when you are doing uh, counseling. So now, so this kind of this theory or this theoretical aspect will help you understand, will help you relate when you are working in your client setting. So coming to the first unit, it talks about meaning and definition of guidance. It also talks about why do we need guidance, what is the history behind guidance, how it started, and what is the purpose of guidance. Uh, okay, so before we go in detail in the syllabus, you have been given 3 books as a part of your suggested readings. There's two. The first book and the third book is available on Google Books or Google like on your laptops. The second book is not available to read. The first and the third book, you can read some aspects or some parts of the books on Google. The second book is not available. uh, There are two more books that I would like to suggest. The one of them is called Guidance and Counseling in Colleges and Universities, by S.K. Kocher. So I'll just repeat the name. The name of the book is Guidance and Counseling uh, in Colleges and Universities by S.K. Kocher. So that is one book that it is by Indian. It is by an Indian author, and the second book is called An Introduction to Counseling and Psychotherapy. This is by a foreign author, and the author is Andrew Reeves. So these two books you can also refer. They will also give you an insight into what are the various processes, what are the various steps that you will follow when you are doing counseling or guidance. Okay. uh, so now coming back to our syllabus, which is the focus of today's session. The uh, the first session, as we have spoken, we'll talk about the definitions of counseling. We'll also talk about the purpose of counseling or the need for counseling. A lot of times, when we provide counseling or when we do counseling, people tend to uh, say, what is the difference? What is the difference between giving advice, and what is the difference between you doing professional counseling? So the core difference lies in the relationship that you as a counselor have with your client. Now, let me give you a small example. In your day to day lives, how many times have you been given advice? There will Your parents will give you advice on something, your teachers, your colleagues, your neighbors, everybody has an habit of giving advice to you, or to anybody for that matter. But then, when you see back, remember the number of times you have actually followed that advice. When we talk about advice is something that, people really don't want. People really don't look forward to getting advice from somebody. But then but then there'll be sometimes when, somebody gives you an advice and you actually follow it. So let's say there are two people. There's A and there's a person B. So both have given you a similar advice or a similar guidance. But then why is it that you have followed what A has said and not followed what B has said? The answer lies between the relationship, within the relationship between you and the person. So in this process of counseling, your task or your goal is not to provide solutions. I mean, yes, you have to provide solutions to your client. Yes, you have to give help them get out of the mess that they have created. But the first and foremost task is to create that relationship, in the sense that when you give that solution, when you tell them what to do, they will actually follow your advice. So that is the core, or that is the difference between the advice or guidance given by a lay person, given by a family member or a friend, and the advice that is given by you as a professional. So that is one core difference. So the relationship that you develop between you and your client is the building block of the process of counseling. Because if you are not able to develop that relationship, no matter how much uh, concrete, no matter uh, how much correct solutions you are able to provide to the client, they will not follow it, or they will not accept that solution with their whole heart. So that is one thing. The second thing is the nature of solutions. When a layman gives advice, when a layman gives guidance or suggestions, it is based on the generic knowledge. So let's say, for example, you see a client who is having exam phobia, or who is having social phobia. So when this person goes to their parents, their teachers, their friends with a similar problem, their solutions or their answers will be based on general understanding of what is happening around. There will not be a specific theory, there will not be a specific uh, background in terms of grounding, in terms of research, in terms of human behavior or understanding of human behavior. These advices will be generic advice. For example, for somebody who has social phobia, a person with a normal person would say that you revise the same thing two times, or you have a lucky chant that you talk. So the answers that they are giving are generic answers, and they will be solutions for everybody. But then when you as a counselor give them solutions, when you as a counselor help them go through this problem, you will first understand what works for your client, what does not work for your client. So instead of giving generic solutions, your solutions or your suggestions will be more specific to this particular person, and you will give them techniques and just not solutions. So you will tell them, you will talk about mindfulness meditation, you will talk about relax gradual or systematic relaxation, you will talk about techniques of gradual exposure, you will talk about techniques of rehearsals. So you will talk in terms of scientific techniques, you will talk in terms of backing theories to what you are saying, or what you are uh, asking the client to do. And you will do it in a systematic way, you will not do it haphazardly, you will not do it you will not jump back and forth, and you will go in a systematic manner which will help the client reach his or her particular goal. So this is the basic difference between between how you as a professional should do counseling, and what makes you one step above the other people who are giving them guidance or counseling. So we spoke about this difference. The first thing is the relationship that you have with your client. The second thing is what advice or suggestions you give, and the third thing is how you give these advice and suggestions. So these three things are something that you need to take from your syllabus. So by the end of the paper, by the end of the course, you should be able to do these three things. And that is the core that is covered in the first topic. So in the first topic, okay, so the second topic is also a continuation, and it will help you how to achieve these three things. So we spoke about the relationship, so how to develop relationship with client. So then for that you have to follow principles of counseling. So the principles of counseling would be purposeful expression of emotions, it will be confidentiality, it will be client self confidence, acceptance of the client, non-judgmental. So there are these 6 7 principles that you will follow, and through your conversations you will follow these principles. Now you will ask me that, okay, how to be non-judgmental or how to be confidential. So you don't purposefully be all these things, you don't do it on purpose, you don't do it consciously, but unconsciously, through the way in which you talk to your client, the client gets the feeling that you are non-judgmental. So instead of trying or instead of forcing these principles in your action, in every day or every time you see the client, you follow these principles, so that the client will understand that, okay, you are excuse me, you are being non-judgmental, or you are being you are accepting the client as he or she is, without making uh, any pictures, or without making any judgments about the client. You are the client will have confidence that you will be confidential, that whatever personal information will that the client is going to share, you are not going to share it in your social circle. You're not going to use that information against the client, and that confidence will what so when you follow these principles, what will happen? You will develop a mutual relationship with the client. Now this mutual relationship will have multiple benefits. The first benefit it will have is that the client will start trusting you. Unless the client trusts you, the client will not give you information. You all know that information or understanding of the client is the core of counseling. Unless you understand the needs of the client, unless you understand the background, the the strengths, the weakness of the client, you cannot help him or her. So how will you know all these things? If the client is truthful, if the client is honest with you in this entire endeavor of counseling. So when you follow these principles, the client will automatically accept you as somebody who wishes well for the client, and will share all this information, will share something that he has not told anybody or she has not shared with anybody except you. So that is the first benefit of the relationship that you will have. The second benefit of this relationship is the client will accept you. So once the client accepts you, the client will accept your suggestions. The client will also accept your challenges, because you accept the client, right? But sometimes when you see that the client is giving contradictory information, or the client is doing something that he or she is not supposed to do, you may also challenge the client. And if the client has not accepted you, then he will not accept she will not accept your challenges. So the relationship will be benefited in case in the sense that the client will start accepting you. So if you are questioning the behavior of the client will understand that you are questioning the behavior and not the client. And that ways it will help you to have a constructive conversation with the client without offending or without damaging the relationship with your clients. The third thing that is going to help you is it will make sure that the client is following the treatment. Now treatment is not in terms of only uh, what do you say only medicines, but treatment is also in terms of the different activities, the different behavior changes that you are suggesting to the client throughout the process of counseling. So let's say for a client who is having problems with controlling his or her aggression, you are asking him to do a certain things which will help the client to resolve this problem of aggression. So if you don't have that relationship with the client, you will not be able to ensure that the client is following these steps. Because as counselors, you will meet the client maybe once a week or twice a week or maximum three times a week. So throughout the 24 hours of his daily life, you will not be able to go behind, or you will not be able to see him or her for most of the time. And in that case, to ensure that the client is following your instructions, the client is following your suggestions, it is important to have that relationship between you and your client. So that is something that is going to be covered in the second topic. uh, the second topic will also speak about the various it will also speak about different types of of guidance. So it will talk about educational guidance, it will talk about vocational guidance, and it will talk about personal guidance. So educational and vocational, so all these terms are kind of self explanatory, but then uh, what you will study is the basic theory behind these three. Educational guidance could be in terms of students. It can also be in terms of parents. Vocational counseling similarly with with career aspirants and their parents. It can also be with those who are providing employment, because when an organization, let's say you are having your independent office, okay, and you have there's an organization that comes to you, and this organization says that we have been working with people, or we have been working in this field for so many years. Now we also want to employ differently challenged individuals in our organization, but we are not sure whether our existing staff will be accepting of these. So can you do something for us? So that is also a part of vocational counseling, because so if you think that vocational counseling is only for people who are aspiring a career, or who are confused as to what their career should be, that is just one aspect. There is another aspect in which the organization or the organization's culture, uh, organizational culture needs to be worked on, and they can also come to you and ask for help or ask for your suggestions. Then there is also then there is something that is very generic, which is personal counseling. So personal counseling is what you can say, personal guidance or personal counseling is a very broad term, and more than that it is very vague, because when you talk about personal counseling, it sometimes does not remain personal at all. Now okay, so let me give you an example. You are working for an organization which works in an urban community. So let's say it works in a slum community, and the organization provides midday meals, or provides nutritional programs for malnutrition kids. And so in this case, your clients could be the mother of the child. It could also be the child. So when you are dealing with either the child or the mother, you need to understand that this person is not in isolation. This person does not stay in vacuum. This person lives with a family. This person lives with so many people around who are part of her or his community. So even though we say it is personal guidance, it is personal because you will not see everybody, you will not meet the entire family, you will not meet the entire community. So hence your client is an individual, but it does not remain personal, because uh, when the client goes back into their natural environment, uh, the client is going to interact with so many people. The client is going to uh, be a part of the entire social network again, and your counseling should be effective in that environment as well. Okay. So yeah, I have been talking a lot, and we have still 3 units to cover. So in between, if you have any doubts or any concerns, you can surely share your concerns, and I will reply to them as we move through the entire syllabus. Okay, so now we spoke about the first 2 units, which basically focus on the theory aspect of this paper. The next 3 units, we talk about the practical aspects of this paper. Sorry, the next two. There are only, yeah. So the next, so we spoke about the 3 units, right? We spoke about introduction to counseling. We spoke about basic concepts, and we also spoke about the principles and assumptions. So we have covered 3 units. We have right. We have another 2 units, which is guidance in counseling, and guidance in organization of guidance service. Okay. So when we spoke about classification of guidance in the previous unit, we spoke about school guidance, and we spoke about vocational guidance, right? So when we speak about in the next two units, we'll elaborately discuss these two areas of guidance. So the first is guidance in classroom. Okay. Now, as a school counselor, or as a person who is working in educational field, there will be different types of problems that will be coming to you depending on the setting. These problems will start from enrollment itself. So during enrollment, there will be, if you're working in a very good school, or if you're working in a kind of a, a well-off school in a city, then they will have different procedures for enrollment. There will be a parents interview. There will be uh, even tests that will be conducted for the student, and us counselors would be doing these things. So us counselors would be conducting these interviews. us counselors would be creating tests for the students. So your subjects, or the children who are wanting to enroll in your school, would be as little as 3 years old, and they would be coming to join your school uh, in nurseries or in kindergartens, and you will have to design tests for them. So that is one aspect that will be the starting point of school or uh, educational guidance. The second is, if you are working in a poor community, or if you are working in a school counselor in slum areas or in rural areas, then the enrollment scenario is going to be completely different. Here you will have to convince the parents to send the children to school, because uh, in these communities there will be many different needs that would be prioritized over education. And when we are talking about education, or when we are talking about schooling, it will be considered as a liability then as an opportunity. So just opposite to what you have seen in well-off schools, your role will be completely different in these kind of scenario. So how are you going to do that is also important, which you will need to understand. Then once the child has come to school, so what after that? After the child comes to school, you will interact with the child at various levels. The child may be at elementary school, or middle school, secondary school. Now when the child is very young, let's assume that the child is a first generation learner. For this particular child, there is nobody in the house who can give him guidance. The classroom teacher has 30, 40, 60, 70 students to take care, and this child needs special attention. So what are you going to do for this particular child? That is question number one. The second question is, let's say a particular child has certain developmental issues, has some learning disabilities, or has some developmental issues. Uh, his development is not at par with the children of other ages, or the child has other disabilities. Maybe the child cannot see, the child cannot hear, the child cannot speak, the child has physical disability. So you are going to encounter hundreds and thousands of different kinds of children with different needs. And at elementary school, when the child is introduced to learning for the first time, your task is going to assess if the child has any of these difficulties. Now learning disabilities, or developmental disorders, or uh, physical challenges such as not being able to see, hear, or physical disabilities, these need to be assessed in the earlier ages, so that the child can be given special attention, or The child can be given special training starting from the small age. So your task, your role would become more of an assessor. So in the in the first scenario where we are talking about enrollment, we were talking about your role as an inspector or as an assessor to or as an anchor, as a counselor, to encourage the children to go to school. Now once the children are in school, your primary role again becomes of that an of an assessor, to see the abilities, to see the capabilities of the children, so that they can the process of learning or education becomes easier for them. Then again, as a child grows, the education level becomes more and more difficult, and in that scenario your role again would be of a counselor, or as of somebody who gives them guidance as to what to do with this difficulty level, how to cope these difficulties, how to become or how to translate this learning into their vocation in future. That is something that will be covered in the fourth unit. uh, Now when we are talking about the fifth unit, we are talking about organization of guidance service. So now here this here we are talking about when the child or when the person has completed the schooling, at least basic schooling of high school. So then the child, or when then that particular individual will be more oriented towards what to do next, what to uh, aim for after completing my high school. So choosing the stream of education, either it is arts or commerce or science, or choosing any vocation. So which stream to go, where should the future be, how to develop a set of professional skills that are going to be beneficial for that particular individual to work or to join the workforce in future. These are certain aspects that you are going to cover in the next unit. Here we talk about counseling, career counseling or vocational counseling. And there are many organizations, if you see, there are many organizations that talk about providing jobs, or they talk about linking organizations who are seeking employees to people who are seeking employment. So bridge organizations like these, we also talk about many colleges, we talk about many schools who have a career guidance, or who have a counselor or a career counselor specifically for this particular role or for this particular job. We also talk about how to search for jobs. We also talk about how to apply for jobs. We also talk about developing the skills that will help you become more employable. So uh, just so even though the term is vocational counseling and it seems very small and simple, it can be bifurcated, it can be branched or sub branched into many different specifications, which can range from counseling an individual to help him choose the future or the areas of education related to career, to helping them develop the skills which will make them more employable, which will make them more presentable, more confident to face the workforce. Okay, so this kind of concludes our syllabus of the first paper. Uh, as I had said, there are 5 units. The first 2 units speak about the basics of counseling, the concepts, and how or what are the various principles of counseling. The third unit talks briefly about guidance. It talks about classifications of guidance in the areas of educational guidance, vocational guidance, and personal guidance. Then there are 2 chapters which are dedicated specifically for one for educational guidance and one for vocational guidance. uh, at the end of the course, your goal should be able to your goal should be like this. So when you complete this syllabus, you should be able to answer the following questions. How are you so in theory, uh, what are the principles of counseling, how these principles can be applied, or why counseling. So why this person should come to you. The person can go anywhere else, can be with anybody else to solve their problem. Why this person should come to you. Then, when we talk about theory, or converting theory into practical, how are you going to develop a positive, a constructive relationship between you and your client? How are you going to apply these principles, or how are you going to apply the basic skills of counseling into practice? And and how are you going to design specific interventions for the client which will help them or which will be beneficial for them? Uh, excuse Uh, then coming on to the next three units, how are you going to identify specific problems of children or of people who are coming to you for career counseling, and how are you going to chart chart the plan of action for them to help them solve their problems. So these are some things that you will have to so if you are able to find answers to these questions, means you are able to understand the particular syllabus. If you have any concerns or queries, you can ask them in the comment section, and we will ensure that your comments get answered. So thank you very much.